Okay, everyone, and I'm going to keep on going with those mnemonic devices. Now, if you search around the internet for the James Lange theory, you're going to come across videos that call it the James Lange theory, okay? Heard it both ways. The correct pronunciation is Lange, which helps our mnemonic device. So Mr. Woodard said, if you know somebody named James, and he's going to punch you in the face, you run a long way away, and then you feel fear. So that physiological response happens first. You run away, and then you go, I'm scared. Okay? James is going to punch you in the face. You run a long way away. Then you feel afraid. That takes us to our second of the three psychological theories of emotion, and that's the Cannon-Bard theory. Now, the Cannon-Bard theory is going to state that there's no separation in between the physiological response and the emotion. That as soon as the stimulus happens, you both have a physiological response and the emotional response at the exact same time. So good mnemonic device for this one, it's kind of easy. Cannon. If a cannon goes off, the second that cannon goes off, you get startled and you feel afraid at the exact same time. So mnemonic device, cannon goes off, you don't even have time to say the word Bard. You're immediately afraid. You have the physiological response at the exact same time. Okay? One doesn't occur before the other, they're simultaneous. Now, the third theory of emotion actually will add that cognitive piece, that there's some sort of cognitive appraisal. It might not even be something that we're consciously thinking about, but there's a cognitive appraisal of a physiological response, and that creates the emotional response. Okay? So, for instance, again, mnemonic device. I don't know how many of you know this song, but there's a song by the B-52s called Love Shack. So when the B-52s sing Love Shack, sing Shack, okay, that might make me physiologically aroused because I'm like, oh, I like that song. That's a great song, okay? So I have a physiological response. My heart might beat a little bit. I might sweat a little bit. I'm all ready to dance, okay? Now, cognitively, because I like that song, I'm having a physiological response. Cognitively, my brain is saying, oh, that physiological response is a good thing. That song is good. And so I'm now in a good mood. And that's the emotion that's created, is I'm in a positive mood because my brain said, I like the B-52s singing Love Shack. Now here's the trick with the Schachter Singer theory. Somebody else might hate that song. So they hear the song, and it's kind of like, ugh, I hate that song. They might have the exact same physiological response. Their heart might start beating. They might start sweating a little bit. They're having a physiological response. But this time, their brain is saying, I hate that song. And so the emotion that results is going to be much different than mine. They might be put into a bad mood all of a sudden. Their emotions all of a sudden start to become anger. And here's the thing with the Schachter Singer theory, is that might cause us to actually misattribute our emotions. We might misattribute our emotions depending on the context. So a famous experiment was done, and it's been done in different ways. And you can watch the video about one of the types or one of the ways that they've done this experiment. But on the next slide, I'm going to kind of take you through the baseline of the experiment. Okay? Actually, I'll do it right now. The baseline of the experiment is this. You go up to a high rickety bridge. It's swaying. It's up above a big valley. Okay? It's not a comfortable place to be. And what they did was they took I think the first experiment took about 20 men. And they all went across this bridge. And then at the end of the bridge was an attractive woman. And she said, I'm a psychologist and I'm doing a study. And so she asked some questions and such. And she said, at the end, she said, hey, if you have any further questions about the study, I want you to know you can call me anytime. And she gave them her name and number. Now they took another 20 men, ran them across a regular bridge. Now, again, this is not all at the same time. They're catching people as they're crossing the bridge. Okay? The other bridge, though, totally sturdy. perfectly safe, sturdy bridge. Come across the bridge. Excuse me, I'm doing a psychological experiment. Can I ask you a few questions? Sure, go ahead. They ask questions. Hey, if you have any questions later this evening, here's my name, here's my number. And what they found was that more of the gentlemen that crossed the rickety bridge called the psychologist than those who went across the sturdy bridge. And the reason that this experiment is important, or at least telling concerning the Schachter-Singer theory, is what happened was guys crossed the bridge. They were already having a physiological response. They're hundreds of feet up in the air. They're swaying back and forth. They're already a little bit on edge. But then when they talk to an attractive female and she gives them her number, inside their brains are saying, oh, that physiological response. Maybe I kind of like her a little bit. Now again, conscious or not conscious, what ends up happening is, according to the experiment and what the experimenters would hypothesize or theorize from this, is they would say, hey, because more people called her, their cognitive interpretation was that of love. Okay? So on the next slide here is a kind of a using that rickety bridge example to go through the three theories. James Lange theory would say you're crossing the rickety bridge and you have this physiological arousal. You're trembling, heart's racing because you're hundreds of feet up in the air, it's scary, etc. And so you kind of get across the bridge as quickly as you can, and then you realize, I'm afraid. Okay? The Cannon-Bard theory would say you're crossing the rickety bridge, physiological response is happening, and you're feeling fear at the exact same time. There's no difference in timing between the two. And then the two-factor theory, or the Schachter-Singer theory, would say you're crossing the rickety bridge, you have that physiological reaction or arousal, but then your brain interprets that arousal, and it's going to interpret it in different ways. If you're speaking with that attractive female at the end, the theory is that your brain is interpreting that as love, and you're more willing to call the woman later, even if that's not the correct interpretation. That's just where what your brain has interpreted. Okay, I'm going to be done with this particular recording, and we're going to actually wrap up our theories of emotion in the next few slides.